everybody, welcome to FIFI'S World. Today we are going to be reading Benji on the Road. We are going to be reading 20 pages. And yeah. Chapter 1. It was a hot night in a sleepy Louisiana town, and a bright-eyed puppy named Benji was getting ready to pounce. He crouched in a brick alley behind a pizza parlor, nose quivering. An old green dumpster rained paint chips and rust flakes over his golden fur. A stack of flattened cardboard boxes tied up with twine lay nearby. Benji had played with his brothers in the alley all day. Now his attention was on more serious matters. He was on the hunt for dinner. His black-tipped ears stood up, and he cocked his head to one side as he listened for long, shuffling steps. After a few minutes, the human Benji had been waiting for appeared. He was a gangly teenager with cropped brown hair, spiked with gel, and short, scraggly hairs growing out of his chin. He sported a backward baseball cap and a pair of earphones, and he was dragging a thick black garbage bag behind him. When the kid reached the dumpster, he dropped the trash bag and lifted up the dumpster lid. Bending down, he grasped the top of the bag with both hands and heaved it into the dumpster. Before the kid could drop the dumpster lid, Benji made his move. He leaped out from his hiding place, barked in soft, short yips. He shook his head, his floppy ears thumping to and fro. His long brown tail flicked back and forth. "Hey there," the pizza boy exclaimed. He removed his earphones and reached down to pet Benji just as his hand was about to brush the top of Benji's head. Benji ducked and scurried back. He barked playfully. "Come back here," the kid said, laughing. Benji drew back, his tail wagging madly. As the kid stepped toward him, he bolted. Ignoring his mother's warning growl to come back, Benji ran out to the sidewalk. As the pizza boy gave chase, Benji led him around the corner and down the main street. He scampered past shops closing down for the night and dodged giant metal animals that honked and screeched as they swerved away from him. They went several streets before the kid stopped. "Hey, I gotta get back to work," he told Benji, panting. Benji trotted up and let the kid scratch behind his ears. When he was done, the kid stood up reluctantly and headed back to the pizza parlor. After waiting a few minutes, Benji did the same. When he reached the alley, his tail wagged happily. Everything had gone exactly as planned. After being closed for days, the heavy lid to the dumpster was finally open. In his eagerness to chase Benji, the pizza boy had forgotten to close it. Benji scrambled up the pile of cardboard boxes. At the top, he teetered for a moment before jumping headfirst into the open dumpster. Using his tiny claws, he tore into the garbage bag. When he was finally able to make holes big enough to dig the food out, it was as if he had landed in stray puppy heaven. In the first bag, he found half-eaten pizza crust and tomato sauce. Another bag was full of stale donuts covered with cinnamon and sugar, or glazed with icing. Still, a third held apple cores, banana peels, bruised peaches, and overripe strawberries. It was more than enough food to feed a scrawny puppy and his hungry family, too. Benji lifted his head and barked from the end of the alley. His mother trotted out from the makeshift shelter she had created from discarded trash. Benji's brothers and sisters trembled out behind her. As Benji tossed food over the lip of the dumpster, he could hear his mom and his siblings crunching down on the feast. When he was sure his family had enough to eat, Benji licked his lips and burrowed his nose into the nearest trash bag. He gobbled up the first thing he saw, a juicy strawberry with fuzzy green mold on the top. It tasted delicious. He chomped into a donut, then wolfed down 3 pizza crusts. When he was done, he settled down on a soft trash bag and closed his eyes. He fell asleep to the happy gurgling of his tummy. He woke up to the pattering of rain thumbing down on the metal around him. In the dim light that spilled out from the street lamps, Benji could see big wet drops bouncing onto the trash bags and running down, leaving dark streaks on the black plastic. Somewhere nearby, a door slammed. Benji shook the sleep and rain from his eyes and stood up. Something was wrong. Usually he could hear both the gentle woof of his mom and the yelping of his brothers and sisters as they bickered and fought. But along in the dumpster, he could hear nothing. Suddenly he heard a growl. It was his mother. Normally she growled gently if her pups strayed too far from her sight. But this growl was different. He had never heard it before. It was deep and menacing, but also held an edge of fear. Benji scrambled up the piles of trash and lifted his head out of the dumpster. He could see two men coming down the alley. One of them was holding a long pole with a loop at the end. As he approached the dumpster, Benji ducked out of sight, but not before he saw the man swing the pole toward the ground. There was a sharp bark followed by a yelp. "Gotcha!" cried the man. Benji lifted his head up again and saw the man leading his mom forward. The loop had tightened around her neck. She dug her claws into the hard pavement, trying desperately to pull back. But she was no match for the much heavier human. As he tugged her forward, the man's partner reached down and gathered Benji's brothers and sisters into a kennel. He slammed the metal door shut and then lifted the kennel into the back of a van, where the other man had already put Benji's mom. Once the dogs were stowed away, the man with one pole threw it next to the kennels and shut the back door. He inserted a key and locked them. Chuckling, the two men got into the front of the van. As they started the engine, Benji hurtled off the dumpster. As he scrambled down the cardboard pile, the van peeled away in a cloud of smoke and burnt rubber. Benji hopped to the ground and took off after the van, barking wildly. He followed it down the streets, keeping it in sight until it turned a corner onto a main road that led out of town. As it hit a straightaway, the van shifted gears. It gained speed and rumbled away into the night. Benji stopped running as the rain fell softly. Around him, he stood perfectly still. He was alone for the first time in his life, and he didn't know what to do. Ahead of him was a long, dark road where his family had disappeared into the distance. Behind him were the comforting lights of the town he knew and an open dumpster that had enough food to keep him fed for weeks. Benji's mouth watered as he remembered the ripped open trash bags and the heaps and heaps of treats inside them. But then he thought about his mom and his siblings, scared and howling in the van, and his heart began to thump. He couldn't leave them to their fate. He had to try to save them. Benji took a small, slow breath. Then he trotted into the darkness and onto the unknown road ahead of him. Okay, that's gonna be all for today, you guys. We just finished a chapter. That was 6 pages, but they're pretty long. So yeah, next time we'll read another chapter. Bye.